I think you named a double bind really well. There's a good chance that that is a new phrase for some of the listeners. So it is often marked as a situation in which you feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. And it seems like there's no way out. And it seems like you have an either or situation and you're not seeing a third option. You're not seeing nuanced choice.
Welcome to the Fresh Start Family Show. I'm your host, Wendy Snyder, powerful parenting educator and family life coach. And together we are going on a journey to help you expand your heart, learn new tools, and strengthen your family so you can build the family legacy of your dreams. I'm a mama too turned child and family advocate who went from being extremely stressed out back when my strong-willed little girl was a toddler to now thriving as a parent and having the honor to support thousands of families each year who choose to go from frazzled and impatient to peaceful and empowered. Each week, we will dive in with experts, thought leaders, authors, and advocates with insights to help you thrive in your parenting walk, as well as in your marriage and even in your career and faith walk too. Together, sometimes alone, sometimes with my better half and co-host Terry, we'll explore the triumphs and trials we all face as parents and share practical tools to fill our hearts, minds, and souls with inspiration. Take a deep breath and get ready to be poured into with some fresh start inspiration. Let's do this. Well, hello there, families, and welcome to a new episode of the Fresh Start Family Show. I'm your host, Wendy Snyder, powerful positive parenting educator and family life coach, and I am so happy that you are here. Today on the show, we have Miss Sarah Tacy Tangredi joining us, and she is just such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to nervous system healing and regulation and health. And I have personally had the honor of studying under her for almost a year now with my own nervous system healing and regulation work. And so I have just learned so much from Sarah over the many months that I've been learning from her. And I'm excited for you guys to tap into her knowledge and wisdom today too. But let me tell you a little bit more about her before we kick off this episode. So Sarah is an accomplished mind-body trainer of former Olympians, professional athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs. She has a masterful understanding of the way the body functions and how its function impacts emotions and quality living. Through nervous system support, attuned listening, and somatic exploration, her work creates new possibilities for her clients' lives, their work, their bodies, and beyond. So I am so excited for you guys to listen. As always, if you enjoy this episode, please just take a screenshot and share over on social and let us know what you loved about this episode. I would love to hear from you. And without further ado, help me welcome Sarah to the show and enjoy this episode. Sarah, welcome to the show. We are so happy that you are here.
Thank you for having me.
Sarah, oh my goodness. I have had the honor of being in nervous system healing sessions with you and regulation sessions with you now for, I think it's been 8 months through Kate Northrup's program. And I really am not exaggerating when I feel like my life has been changed. And you have been such a sweet addition to my life. And I remember when I first started doing this with you, I attended a session and I was like, this is like slow and really like out there. And I was like, what is happening? I just felt this like initial of like, this is not me. And I'm very like, can be very spiritual and woo-woo. And I just remember there was such resistance in the beginning to like coming to a session together where we really slowed down and like leaned into kind of just, it's just what your sessions are. It's like hard to explain unless you're in them. And now I have grown to just crave my time with you. And you bring such peace to my spirit when I'm with you. And what you teach is just so profound when it comes to nervous system healing and regulation. And I know today we're going to talk so much about double binds and the sacred third and really just so much more that we have on the docket. But it really is just such an honor to be here with you today. You have really changed my life, and I'm just enjoying every second that I get to soak up your knowledge and your light. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I want to say that someone else recently, I was at an event at a friend of mine who was holding a big ceremony, and somebody came up and she's like, oh, I've seen you and I've experienced you in Relax Money. And this person had a very similar experience, that the first session was like, ouch, kind of like, oh, this slowness is really hard. But how life-changing that element was. It was both a thing of, this is uncomfortable, but I think this is exactly what I need. Almost like when you're doing a workout that it's hard to get through, or even yoga classes. In the middle of every yoga class, they used to be like, wait, why am I doing this? But I am often, it's like my body is called to it. There's both like, oh, this is hard, and oh, this feels like I know it's necessary. And so I'm going to keep showing up. And how often the slow is hard. And as a parent, I can do this like in spaces with adults. As a parent, I think that is sometimes like the hardest part of parenting for me, is possibly the slow. I might be in the middle of doing something that feels really important or time sensitive, and Mom, can you come look at this? Mom, I have this. Let's play on the swings even longer. We're taking an hour to get clothes on and brush teeth to get out the door. And so practicing slow has so many important pieces for my own nervous system. But when I can be embodied and start to recognize the difference between a chronic state of momentum and choice of like, oh, actually right now I can go see their project and we can spend some more time on the swings. There can also clearly be boundaries of like, no, we must get to school.
Yes.
But having a little bit more choice in the pace, my girls get to feel more often of, oh, I am safe and my mom is present with me. I'm not perfect with this. This is a huge practice for me. But I think that slow is something most bodies fear because of the way our society has had us move for the majority of our lives.
It's so true. And it's just feels like it's exponentially quickening. Like the device world, and like if you want an answer to something, you just get it in literally 5 seconds when you Google. And right now it's like I've been like spending a little time getting to know and training like chat GPT to like actually help me with my business and some things that I need. And it's just so wild how these days it's like we're increasing our speed of life with so many things that of course that carries into our life when we're triggered. And it just feels like, especially in parenting, that this should be something that should take 20 seconds like it does to Google. How do you get a kid to eat their vegetables? How do you discipline a child after they've hit their sister, right? Like, and it's becoming more and more foreign to slow down and feel safe, like actually stepping outside and taking a moment to like think about how we want to handle the challenge, right? And so it just feels like it's compounding fast. And so your work is just so important to create the rhythm of practice, because we all know that's how you build a skill set. Like you don't just learn about something and then the next day it's like, great, got that. It's like you really have to show up and go to the gym for a year or train. We were just chatting before we started to record about my daughter now that's almost 17 and actively pursuing a D1 beach volleyball scholarship. And I've watched her train 5-6 days a week for like since the 3rd grade to get where she's at now, right? And she jokes that she really wants to grow abs, and she knows that in order to grow those abs, it's not going to happen overnight. She's been strength training for about a year now, in addition to her regular, beach volleyball program, but it just takes time. And so to create that safety and to create the practice and to have such a strong mentor in that space, it's just wonderful. And also, Sarah, it's interesting what happens with you. that I would love to like kick off this conversation with, because I've always just been so curious. And I know I've learned about the idea of someone holding the thermostat of like, or, and maybe you can explain that concept a little bit. But when I am with you, I just naturally slow down. It's not like when I get with you, you're like, okay, Wendy, slow down. You're going to slow your speech and your breathing. But something happens with you that I just naturally, and so is this co-regulation, right? Like, which is what we all want to do with our children, which we know is impossible to do if we are still the thermostat that is like catastrophizing and in that non-regulated nervous system state where we feel like a bear is chasing us. So of course our child is not going to feel safe calming down or self-regulating or taking a deep breath when we are not holding that thermostat. So could you just maybe start us with explaining that concept and help me understand why I feel so calm and safe in your presence, even though we're on Zoom, we're not even in the same room right now as we're recording?
Yes. I'm just taking a little note here. I was first really intrigued as you were telling the story about your daughter and how our society would say, D1 athlete, you can spend all your time training and we are going to support you and we are going to celebrate you. And imagine, and like you're not going to grow abs, you got to work for your abs, you spend time on your abs, 6 days a week on skills. I want to like include really like a lot of skill training, a lot of weightlifting. Imagine, so the John Chitty is one of the founding fathers. Like there are many pieces of people who have really brought together some core principles of this nervous system work. And one of his first practitioner skills is presence. Mm-hmm. And so could you imagine if we valued presence the way we value getting a higher education, being an elite athlete, if we spent that same time, and that could be like going for a walk. I'm not even saying that you must then sit for a meditation. And you maybe heard me say in one of our last sessions, like for some people that might actually be like taking a drum and beating it really hard, or like yelling a song at the top of your lungs, or humming so quietly. There are many different ways to work with our nervous system so that we can be more embodied. But that is a state of presence. When I am in the role of space holder, just as many of your listeners may be in the role of parent, I am very clear that my role is presence. My role is stability. And just like a parent who goes to meet a child who's crying, co-regulation is going to happen. We just don't know who's going to win out. So either the one who is going over to care and be present, their nervous system is the most steady and consistent in that, and the child starts to regulate towards them, or the child's nervous system, that is, maybe they're whining, maybe they're screaming, maybe they're saying things that are touching on your inner child, and maybe their nervous system wins out, and then suddenly you're like, I said stop, or come back.
Regulating to like, you, damn it.
Yeah. And so, again, going back to, so I am a parent of an 8.5-year-old and a 4.5-year-old, and my nervous system doesn't always win. There are times where I have to step aside, or I'm lucky enough that my husband might come in. Like there are times where we might like switch off, like, they got me, your turn.
Oh, good. I'm so glad to hear that's good for you. That happens to you, even though you're like this highly trained Zen master.
And so what you're experiencing, and what I've heard from other people that experience sometimes with me in spaces as space holder, is a resonance. We're starting to, I'm holding steady in myself, and there's something in you, there's a part of you that knows that, and it starts to vibrate that as well. And sometimes it could be like the person with the highest intention, the person with the highest focus, with the highest clarity might be the one who gets to hold the thermostat. And when you say thermostat, there's this idea of the thermostat or the thermometer. And a thermostat stays steady. So if the environment around it changes, it sets off air to keep bringing the environment back to its level. If you're the thermometer and the kid is losing, like having really big feelings,
yeah,
and then you're going to read their really big feelings and say, actually, now I'm 98 degrees because that's the temperature of what I was just placed in, right? And so the goal, which we just, I think, have to give ourselves grace over and over again, is that we get to help stabilize to the point we want. And maybe I'll say one more thing about the thermostat, which is something that Kate often says in Relax Money, is our thermostat level is often set at what our nervous system, our body, our system knows to be its normal. So if we grew up in chaos, it's going to want to be in chaos unless it's had practice and repetition of a different way. And so that is something to be aware of, is having places and spaces to have repetitions of building into a new reality.
Yes. And, listeners, to be clear, it's like when we think back, it's not that our childhoods were all chaos all the time. Like many people say, well, I had a great childhood, right? But it's specifically chaos or unsafeness when conflict arises, right? When a human is not doing what another human wants, or a human has made a mistake. Like, how was that handled when you were growing up, right? Like, what was that environment? And so learning about that concept has just been so interesting to know. And one of my favorite phrases is, and this is to use with children and to use with ourselves, is, this makes sense. I'm not crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. Like, it makes sense that I absorbed that I am most comfortable with that, even though it doesn't make logical sense. It makes sense why my body or my nervous system, so to speak, is comfortable, like, wanting to fix stuff fast, or lay the smack down, or raise my voice, or because my history is that I think a huge section of my students mirror my story, is we just didn't quite realize how reactive we were and uncomfortable, not getting what we want until we had the honor of raising a little strong-willed human. So a lot of our clients, the reason why they enter into this work, I think a lot of parents don't end up doing parenting classes or expanding their toolkit if they don't have a strong-willed kid, because you can kind of get away with it, right? Like, if the kid's not going to break your back, so to speak. But if you've been blessed with a strong-willed kid, like, so many people end up on their knees just wondering, like, how did I get here? How did I become this yelling, punishing, door slamming, grist grabbing, someone who just catastrophizes and shames my child? Like, I always said I was in college, I was like the most positive, bubbly person. I still am. But it's like, it wasn't until I had this little strong-willed toddler that my nervous system started to show its wear and tear, that I now have learned that it makes sense, that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a bad mom. I am not a bad mom. I just have a lot of unconditioning to do, so to speak. And as I often use the word frazzled or rattled, it feels very unsafe to be in conflict, especially I think when you're in power. But anyways, families, listen up, because I have something very exciting to tell you. The Fresh Start Family Freedom to Be Personal Development course is taking place on September 28th and October 5th, and registration is officially open for you to grab your ticket. This is the program that changed everything for me 10 years ago when I was new to positive parenting and loving what I learned in class. But when I came home to apply the strategies I was taught, I struggled. After going through this life-changing program, I all of a sudden was actually able to respond versus react, implement compassionate discipline instead of constantly reverting to harsh punishments, and actually stop blaming my strong-willed toddler for all of my problems. I'm not exaggerating when I say that freedom to be changed the entire future trajectory of my life, and I am completely honored and humbled to now be teaching this course. During this experiential program taking place on September 28th and October 5th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific, it's all online, so no matter where you are in the world, you can join us. But you will get both the heart and the soul, which is the spirit side, of ending limiting belief cycles and healing from past experiences and stories that are keeping you stuck in negative knee-jerk reaction cycles, whether that's in your parenting or your marriage or even your career. And you're going to get the step-by-step logistics, which is what I call the strategy side, of changing your unhealthy behaviors, your unproductive tones, your negative self-talk, and some of the broken communication cycles. We're going to help you turn those into healthy ones that you're proud of and that actually work to make you feel really good about the way you handle yourself each day, no matter how strong-willed your kids are or what kind of challenges get flung your way. So I want you to head on over to freshstartfamilyonline.com/freedom to learn more and save your seat. This program is a 2-day course and seats are selling out very quickly because seats are so limited for this program. So if it's easier to shoot me a DM on Instagram, just come find me. I'm at FreshStartWendy and send me the word transform, and I will personally send you a link to learn more in your DMs. Or if you're enjoying this episode on YouTube, you can just simply click below in the show description or in the pinned comment, and that'll take you to the information page. And don't forget, if you are a Fresh Start Experience member, you get a special discounted rate off your Freedom to Be ticket. So be sure to check your email and the private group for more info about that. All right. I cannot wait to see you at Freedom to Be. It's going to be so fun to gather with you for this 2-day workshop and experiential healing program. And let me know if you have any questions, but head on over, grab your ticket, and I'll see you there. And so let's go ahead and discuss what the double bind is and the sacred third, because our parents listening, many of them are like, cool, I want to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. So like one of my favorite authors, her name is L.R. Nose. She has a quote that's, I'm probably not going to say it exactly right, but it's like our job as parents is to bring peace is to add calm to the chaos instead of like adding to the chaos essentially. But it feels like a double bind because it's like, I must stop yelling. And especially after parents enter into my world where they start to bring loving awareness around how it really just is never going to work if you expect your child to be more responsive and walk away when their brother like crushes their Lego tower instead of smacking them or screaming in their face, right? Like it's just never going to work if you are modeling yelling or if you are like being aggressive or using shame or pressure, overpowering, right? We say the classic hand-me-down parenting tactics are external methods, which are fear, force, bribery, and rewards. And so to really step into a full empowered state as a parent, you are going to want to help yourself first and heal yourself and get to a place where you are behaving in a way that you're asking your child to behave. And so that loving awareness builds in the beginning, but parents, I think, struggle so much with this double bind of like, okay, well, I must stop yelling. I must stop being so reactive. I must stop seeing my child in this way, but I can't because I've been taught my whole life that, a child needs to have instant obedience. We come from a lot of families who heal from like a religious trauma background of being force-fed this concept of instant obedience. And if not, there's going to be pain and humiliation involved, or that people will judge me, or that I will come across permissive, or I'm just not capable. I've tried. And it's like, I just can't. My hand grabs or smacks or whatever it may be. So will you teach us about the double bind and the sacred third? And I know this concept just really opened my eyes to what was possible when I identified what it is. So if you could help us with that.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm finding that I want to rewind to a past part and then come back to this double bind.
Please.
I want to add a possibility when you were talking about how you were bubbly in college and then had a strong-willed kid. I love that you brought that in because I definitely have a very strong-willed kid, and it was confusing to me because I was a very easy kid. I was just, what would make your life better, mom and dad? And, the definitely a people pleaser, but it brought me so much joy. So I just didn't understand somebody who was just like not there to please me. I was just like, had like there were, but I just want to say so that there could be parents that respond to that with yelling. And I also want to speak to any parent out there who actually goes into a freeze and it can come across as being peaceful, but inside it feels like being helpless. And so I just want to put that out there as a possibility that people could look at some parents and go like, oh, they're so peaceful. But if you're a parent who's feeling that way, but you're also actually feeling helpless, just wanted to give space for the other end of the spectrum that's having same experience, different response, still out of the range of regulation.
Yeah, so, and that often will lead a parent into the permissive land where you just freeze and like you end up being like, okay, fine, here's the chocolate or the cookie, or fine, you don't have to wear shoes, because you're, that's so the frozen state often we find ends up entering into the permissive land, which really can wreak havoc on a family too.
Yes. Yeah. We could also go on a whole tangent on that, but I'm going to answer your double bind question first. And then we'll see if there's like room for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think you named a double bind really well. There's a good chance that is a new phrase for some of the listeners. So it is often marked as a situation in which you feel stuck between a rock and a hard place. And it seems like there's no way out. And it seems like you have an either or situation and you're not seeing a third option. You're not seeing nuanced choice. The phrase is often, I must, I can't. So as Wendy just said, I must stop yelling. I can't stop yelling or they won't listen to me. They're not getting anything done. It doesn't seem like they're not hearing me. And the way my teacher, Bridget Vixnans, showed me the double bind is that she takes her two fists, and this is where actually physiology can help us to think differently. If you make two fists and you tighten them really strong, and you take a moment just to feel your breath. This part I'd say perhaps that I added to it because I love emotional anatomy. So if you just take your fists, squeeze them really strong, and notice where your breath goes. Wendy, where do you feel your breath?
I think it often goes up to like my upper chest and my neck and like my jaw, and my shoulders go up.
Beautiful. Yeah. So when we make a fist, which is what we would do if we were in fight, any physiological change we make has hormonal shifts, has nervous system shifts. So just by making fists, we start to bring ourselves into a double bind territory, and then we can put our fists together. So I'm going to put mine pinky to pinky. My thumbs are further away from each other. And I can look at the hands, be like, look at my left hand and go, oh, okay, I must stop yelling. And part of that I'm going to like couple that there's probably some shame there. Like if I yell, I'm a bad parent. If I yell, they're going to be in therapy talking about me in 20 years from now. If I yell, I failed the program. And the other one's like, but I can't stop because they won't listen to me. And maybe they're even in danger and they really need to turn off the TV. And so you have these two things. And instead of trying to bypass either of them, we're going to begin to open up our hands and look at our hands and look at both things as being true. And I might take away the all or nothing and just go like, I really want to stop yelling. Look over at my left hand. So you might not do this in the moment that you're yelling, right? This is something you might like step as, I really want to stop yelling. And then I'm going to look over at the other hand. They don't seem to be listening to me. And I could go back to the first one. And as I'm doing this, I start like bringing one hand down and the other. I'm kind of like weighing them back and forth and really looking at them like they matter. And what I find, again, physiologically, as soon as your hands open, you start coming out of the fight or flight response. You might notice. Yeah. So if you notice your breath, I may have guided that a little too much. If you notice your breath with your hands open, where is it now for you?
It's like lower in my upper tummy or, tummy.
Yeah. And for me, it's also lower and it's more horizontal. So I can feel it going wide in my lower ribs and a little bit to my back.
That's so
bad. So now I'm like, okay, I don't want to yell. And around that, I can recognize like, I really love my children. And I really want them to know how much I love them. And I really like can feel into that love right now. And I can look over at like, oh, and they're not listening. I wonder, now these are the I wonder statements, which activate your reticular activating system in your brain, which may help you to see possibilities you wouldn't see before. I wonder what would help them hear me. I wonder if there's anything I need to hear. And as I go back and forth, instead of a rock and a hard place, I start to learn more things. I start to learn like, oh, I really love my kids and I really want them to feel best. I wonder if I am not hearing something. I wonder if there's a way that I can. And so I start asking more questions. And then as I approach it again, when I approach with curiosity, we might find that there are a lot of micro answers. I love to say that there's a sacred third. And sometimes I could give you some examples in a moment of when I've had a really clear, oh, here's a sacred third. Like here's a third option. I thought there were two, but there are three. And in the third option, it's a win-win scenario. So Ray Castellino, who again was one of these founding fathers who is pre and perinatal and had these philosophies of if you can do these 7 things as the one carrying the baby, and then in family units, your child's going to grow up feeling really well supported with a regulated nervous system. And one of the first principles is mutual support and cooperation, which means that it's a win-win. So instead of like the child wins or I win or no one's winning, as I start to come to nuance, which we can only come to in a state of regulation, there's a possibility that we all win.
Yes. Which is so new to so many people because many people are trained that that's like a weak way of parenting. Sharing power actually makes you weak, right? But obviously we live in a different world where we are learning that that's actually safe and it's effective and it's smart. And as you said, raises human souls to have settled, healthy nervous systems, right? Where they are heard and valued and honored. And in the end, it's like it is too much on our shoulders when we think we have to do it all and control these little humans. So in reality, like we do need their help, and humans, human souls, in my experience, they have such a strong need to feel powerful, to belong, to feel valued, that they love to help. They actually, if you can empower them to be part of the solution, a lot of times they will cooperate easier, be redirected easy, like all the things, but that idea of the sacred third coming from within or through your relationship with God is so beautiful, because I think a lot of us, when we're studying under someone, like, you mentioned something where some of the shame part of it was like, oh no, am I going to be judged? I do think probably a lot of my students, and I know this from being in some beautiful intimate in-person classes together, where they've said, sometimes I just worry that you'll judge me, Wendy, right? Like if you found out that I'm doing this still after being with you for 2 years, I'm still doing something that I highly regret, right? But there's those little thoughts of like, what would Wendy do? Or somebody needs to tell me, or I need to remember a strategy. And instead, as you go through that, I just remember like how much innate wisdom we have within and that we're capable of receiving when we stay in the settled nervous system state, or at least come back down to like a safe place versus that scary zone of, oh my gosh, the kids are literally going to kill each other. The neighbor's going to judge me. They're going to grow up to be entitled brats. And this all means I'm failing, which is the unconscious, subconscious, whatever you want to call them, that without awareness, they just flood the body like poison, right? And so as I hear you describe that, it's just, and I never heard this like double fist. Maybe I missed that in the beginning, but like that just feels like it's another toolkit, part of a toolkit that we can use, that where you're like literally doing an exercise that you can do any time of the day to tighten and then release. And just that in itself, changing the physiology and tapping into that different part of the brain to create safety. And then that's where the creativity flows. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I guess we could do this. I could, you know? And you said the word, so, and I wonder, those were two of your biggest things that I love. Would you add something like, this makes sense, why I'm here? Or is that helpful or no?
When you're doing the double bind work, to say this makes sense.
Why I'm so triggered, or why not? Okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna add.
My teacher, her phrase is, of course. And I feel like, and it's not necessarily for double binds, it's just when I'm working with somebody and they may be like, oh man, and when I was like in the hardest part of my life and I could barely get out of bed, like I smoked 2 cigarettes a day, like first of all, of course you were in bed, and of course you had those cigarettes. Like these things saved your life at a time where there were no more resources, and you made it through, and here you are having new choices and new capacity, right? Like there is the of course, and it's, to me, it's the same thing as saying that makes so much sense. It makes so much sense, and of course. And it's like probably that little kid in us that maybe didn't get that, who got the like, why would you do that? Why would you throw your brother's toys? And instead of like, oh my God, of course you feel so powerless in this. It seems to me you probably, do you feel powerless? Like, I'm not finding the right words right now, but I find a lot of times my kids might act out when they're feeling powerless, and then they're trying to find a way, like their bodies are trying to find a way to feel empowered. And it might be through throwing something or something they say or using their size. So I mean, I think those are always helpful. And when you're looking at the two things to be true, to throw in the verbiage that would help us understand this is totally normal. It's like loving, compassionate language. And when we can give ourselves that is what our kids are receiving. So my husband and I work with a parenting specialist every Friday, but really we're just doing work on ourselves. Yeah. It's funny because you maybe wouldn't know it because we actually almost never talk about our kids. It's often more about our childhood or our patterning or what's happening now and where does that pattern come from. So truly we're doing all nervous system work. And he said, when your child is acting up, if you had cameras in your house, it may be like a half an hour before that you may have had body language that was either stressed or you frowned, and their body is reading, I'm not safe, so I'm going into fight or flight. And so his whole thing was like, it's so much like he barely gives us parenting advice. It's more their body is reading your body. And then you make up stories about why they're doing the things and you try to give them context so that they understand their feelings. But we are the thermostat and they are reading us. And then they're amplifying what they're reading. And then from there, who is going to be the thermostat at that point? Who is amplifying it? Or do we bring ourselves back down to the place that we want them to feel safe? The double binds using the hands, like if you are actually feeling that in that moment, you're like, well, I can't walk through the whole double bind exercise. Thomas Hanna, I believe he his work came out, or like 1950s to 1970s. And he has a book called Somatics, and he talks about sensory motor amnesia and how these patterns in our bodies, they turn on to protect us. And over time, we might think that we're aging because we get stiff or but really they're just old patterns that hold on and start creating soreness. And we can't say, just relax. Just like you said to me, Wendy, like, I don't come on and tell people to just relax, right? Instead, what you do is you voluntarily override the involuntary. So you actually would engage the muscles even more and tighten, 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 tighten. And once you are voluntarily tightening instead of involuntarily tightening, then there's choice. So when we use our hands to do the double bind scenario, we voluntarily tighten. We like recognize that we're in a tight place. And then we relax the hands open. And our physiology is going to affect what we can see. And we can start to just back and forth. What else is available? What other choices do we have?
That's so cool. And I love to hear that your parenting coach just always supports you. It's so true. Sometimes I'm like, my students have got to be like, can we get back to strategy? You know, and we have all the strategy in the world inside of our libraries and our lessons. But most of our coaching sessions that we do are a lot of, that kind of personal work. So that's so cool to hear.
One of the best presents I ever had the courage to ask for my husband, Terry, was a few days away to take care of myself and heal from a bunch of stuff that I didn't even realize at the time was holding me back from creating the life of my dreams as a mom. Over 10 years ago, Terry gifted me with his full support, which meant watching two very wild and wonderful toddlers for the entire 2 days so I could attend the Freedom to Be immersive healing program. That one investment in myself and my own healing changed everything for the future of our marriage and family as Mama came back a changed and refreshed woman. I now have the honor of teaching the same program twice a year, and our online course is taking place very soon on September 28th and October 5th. So now is the best time to talk to your spouse. If this program is on your wish list and you want to gather with me and an incredible group of open-hearted, committed parents for 2 days of personal liberation through exercises designed to set you free and empower you to create the life you were destined to live. Goodbye self-doubt, resentment, blame, bitterness, confusion, permissiveness, reactive tendencies, and people-pleasing. And hello, confidence, forgiveness, self-compassion, patience, personal responsibility, and accountability, and deep peace. You deserve this, and your time is now. So let your spouse know that more than candles or sweaters or even a massage if you have a birthday coming up, or even as an early holiday present, yes, it is okay to ask for holiday presents early, you would actually just love their support to help you take care of yourself for a few days so you can actually join us for the Freedom to Be weekend, knowing that your kiddos will be cared for. You can also consider asking a neighbor or a friend if they want to do a swap, and maybe after they help you with your kids, you can then go help them with their kids so they can go take care of themselves or their marriage in a special way. So whether it's them or family, your spouse, partner, neighbors, friends, whoever it is that you ask to help you with your kids, remember that someone is just waiting to help you out. You just have to find the courage to ask. As a special gift to our loyal podcast fans, that's you, I want you to use the coupon code TRANSFORM during the month of September to get $50 off your Freedom to Be ticket. Just head to freshstartfamilyonline.com/freedom. And again, use the code TRANSFORM and that'll take $50 off. Alternatively, if it is easier for you, you can just DM me the word transform on Instagram. I'm at Fresh Start Wendy, and I'll personally send you a link to learn more and save your seat for Freedom to Be. Okay, and as always, if you're enjoying this episode via YouTube, you can just click the link in the episode description, or you can click through the pinned comment to snag your ticket. All right, families. Well, I can't wait to see you at Freedom to Be. It's going to be an incredible 2 days together.
Let's talk a little bit about the concept that I know you wanted to cover is the the familiar and the unfamiliar, and just feeling, we touch on it a little bit, but just let's riff on that a little bit more so we can really just normalize how it works and why it makes sense that the unfamiliar feels so dangerous and like our body is just knee-jerk rejection or resistance. And again, most of our families, it's like here at Fresh Start Family, when I founded this organization, and I created my business plan, it's like my vision was to make this type of firm and kind, connection-based, relationship-based parenting like commonplace, right? Like you would get this information in high school or college 101 classes. Like everyone learns how to use connection-based positive psychology to influence other humans, to do what you want. Because, whatever the stat is, I'll just say 80% of the world is going to procreate, right? Like that's my vision, that people get it ahead of time. But most of my clients are like me, where they find this work in crisis, where they have all of a sudden the strong-willed toddler that they're like, oh, we're punishing like 20 times a day, timeouts and spankings and all the things that we were taught that you do, and a kid just listens, and all of a sudden we're so stressed out. Our home is chaotic. We feel so disconnected from our kids, and we just are like exhausted and tired. And I can't believe this is how parenting turned out. But you've been taught and all this rhetoric for years and years about how how you're supposed to parent. And then you experienced it. A lot of our parents experienced that for 18 years, the fear and force autocratic model. So then to come into something new, it's like our heart responds first, where it's like, oh, this is amazing. Yes. And a lot of times people get fast results, right? Because they see their kids just respond to, I think, the energy shift of what we've been talking about. And then oftentimes, you start to go more advanced, and you then are like, okay, I'm going to replace punishment with compassionate discipline. And it's like record scratch. Wait a second. This feels really uncomfortable. And there's just so much resistance that shows up. So can you touch on that concept of familiar, unfamiliar, and what we can just do to just step into more safety around that?
Yeah, I'd love to add familiar, unfamiliar, optimal.
Yes.
And that familiar and optimal can be the same, but often it's not. And what's happening in the body, this is my opinion, and it's based a bit from Candace Pert's work, which I read maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. And she was the first one to isolate the opiate peptide. And she started studying, where are these? Oh, you mean they're not all in the brain? Our emotions aren't all in our brain? Oh, they're on like all the cells in our body, almost all the cells in our body. And then seeing that all these cells have receptor sites, if you can imagine going from the inside of the cell to the outside of the cell, and that it's not a locking key, but it's a vibration. So when people talk about high vibration or I changed on a cellular level, our speech is often more intuitive than our mind actually knows. And so what's happening when we change, when we really make changes, is that we have to change on a cellular level. So we have these little receptor cells that are, vibrating to, I like to say, like one's maybe like doing a salsa dance. And then peptide, which is an emotion, comes along and it's used to binding with a certain receptor. So we're used to saying, like, say if you watch TV every day at 6 o'clock, your cells it's like a dog waiting for its dinner at 6 o'clock. Like you start vibrating in like readiness to get that dopamine hit, and you are ready for it. And if you change that pattern, it feels like abandonment. It feels like withdrawal, because now your receptor cell is like, where's my dance partner? Where's my dance partner? And nobody shows up. Oh. And but what's happening, this is what I'm borrowing a phrase called the tension field. You could also say you're in the unfamiliar. It's this space in between familiar and optimal, where withdrawal is happening at a cellular level, and the body is freaking out. I don't know how to survive this next phase. And as a parent, my experience has sometimes been like, you know what? Like when you were talking about the passive parenting, there can be a point where like, I don't care, have the snack. I don't care, have the piece of candy. Like nothing could be worse. Nothing could be worth this much screaming and dysregulation. Like, do I care that much about?
Yeah.
But what's happening is that they're having a huge chemical process in their body. And it's like that learning how to say no, that learning how to have patience. And can we as a space holder, as a parent, be strong enough and stable enough to say like, I will usher you through the tension field.
Yes.
And on the other side, a new pattern is created. And this is the same thing that happens for us as adults. When we start to change patterns, there can be a lot of fear and it can feel really uncomfortable. Sometimes it's considered like, oh, it feels like death inside, or the fear of death, like going slow. When you talked about that, I don't know, you were going so slow. Your cells weren't getting the momentum that they were used to getting. And momentum helps us override and bypass any feelings of discomfort that might be there if we slow down.
Yeah.
So when we wait long enough, and if we have the capacity, part of this has to do with growing capacity. And if we create the conditions, then we're able to stay with activation long enough to create a new pattern. I will give an example with my daughter. She liked to have some water at night, and my girls have really great bladders. Like they could drink a whole thing of water and they're not going to get up in the middle of the night. And so it hasn't been a thing for us. So we're just like, great, you want water.
Yeah.
And then it's like, I want milk. And then I'm so hungry. Can I just have a cracker? Right. So it's like these small steps to like having meals in bed. It literally was not meals in bed, but like at some point, and I want to say I wasn't necessarily the parent who was offering these things, but they started because we just wanted her to get to bed. We didn't want to put it off more, and then she's going to have a bigger meltdown. There was time sensitivity. And one night I was like, hey, we're going to do this. Like, I'm going to sit here. And I told her the night before, like, this will be the last night that we have crackers in bed and milk in bed. We'll check in before we go upstairs to remind you this is the last opportunity to have, crackers and milk.
I love that.
You can always have water upstairs. And the next night comes and she wants what she wants because our body is now in a cycle where it is wanting its comforting thing. And those were her comforting things. And it was so hard to sit there for maybe 45 minutes as she was having the biggest feelings. And I'm just thinking, like, do I care if she has a cracker? Like, there's a part of me that's like, have your crackers. I'm sorry.
Cells are like,
but it was, my cells were like, can I be with these feelings?
Yeah.
Can I be with something that's this large? And then I start questioning, like, am I even right? But we made it through. Right? I made it through, and I was able to be present with her. And that shows her something for other times in life too, right? That also shows her, like, think about times when perhaps you're breaking up out of a toxic relationship and there are all these desires to go back. Can you be stable? Can you have a stable other in your life who's like, I see you, I know you, I'm here for your optimal, and I will stay with you through this threshold. And you stay. And there hasn't been a night since. There have been no arguments. There have been no begging. It's just, oh, we don't do this, because it was consistent. There are plenty of times where I feel like we're like, do we care about that? And then we buckle, and I understand it's not the best. But the things that we're like, oh, this is clearly something we don't do anymore. I've had somebody else who I was on their podcast, and we were talking about this for the reason of entrepreneurship. And then she texted me later to say, oh, I was in Target with my kid. And having this in mind was so helpful when they wanted the thing that they wanted. And there was a part of me that just didn't want to break their heart. And of course I can afford it. And to actually just remember, oh, we're in the tension field. And it's my job to be the thermostat and to usher my child through. Because, whether it was their boundary or whether it was what was optimal, it's a good reminder. And even when she said that to me, I was like, oh, thank you. That's a good reminder for me.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It just reminds me, of like, I see parents, and I was there for a while too, where we'll do anything to stop the drama. And so you put the Band-Aid on and you lay the hammer, or you yell, or some people might go to the bribery or rewards or just saying yes. And it's like anything to have it stop, because of that tension field is so new to people, right? That like unfamiliar hell that I hear, people talk about, as far as the body will choose the unfamiliar hell any day. Or, sorry, am I saying that right, Sarah?
The familiar hell over the
Thank you.
familiar heaven. Mm-hmm.
I literally say it wrong every time I say it. And so we get into this pattern, and then I just see it perpetuate. And then the child, like, they never get through it on their own, and they learn that it just becomes this massive cycle of where it just never ends. And then we find that when families can get to the place where they do exactly what you're talking about, create the safety, bring in the ability to either co-regulate or believe that their child can get through what I call the rainbow on their own without having to fix it or stop it, and then coming together and basically like, look at us. We did it. We created that new synapsis, I suppose you could say, where we are capable, and this is part of life. This is part of being human. And we got through this together, right? And that's what really I see families, and I know I experienced it for myself, just insane amount of growth happens after that. And so it's just so cool to hear a little bit more about the science behind it. Sarah, I could talk to you for hours, and I wish we had like 5 hours with you today. I feel like I'm going to have to hire you to come. I don't know if you do that at all, but to come into our Fresh Start Experience group sometime, because I know that our community would just be so blessed by learning more from you. But in the meantime, where can listeners come find you and work with you if they want to get more of this in their life?
First, I so appreciate you being mindful of time, and that part of me that's like, wait, one more thing.
I know.
The 3 directions map, which I also call that the rainbow, which is so interesting.
Oh.
Yes, it's like, so one of the directions of those 3 is the rainbow. And to get through what we're talking about, this tension field, we build conditions. And so we've talked about the condition of pacing. And then you said that then your child sees they can get through this on their own. But one of the conditions is relational health, which I know you also named as part of your programming. Because even as adults, I am still working to reprogram myself around like not needing to self-regulate all the time, that I could lean on stable others. So the guy that we work with on Fridays is always trying to get people to call him, but his phone is largely silent because most of his clients are highly independent individuals who try to figure it out on their own. And so he's trying to get them to understand what it's like to regulate with a stable other. And so when your child makes it through that threshold, it's actually important that they didn't they didn't do it on their own, that they have come into relationship with somebody who can be stable while they're looping. Because for me as an adult who has all the tools, when I'm looping, I still feel like, I don't want to burden anybody. All my friends are so busy, and they're not going to want to hear from me when I'm like looping and spinning out and I'm having bigger emotions than I quote unquote should over this thing. So beautiful that a child could know early on that all of them is welcome. That's another Ray Castellino principle, like all of you is welcome. And when you have your biggest emotions, I am not scared of them. And you make it through with somebody by your side. And then of course you are more capable to do it on your own, but to actually then want partnerships that have that, and want friendships that have that, and want business relationships. I'm not saying you'd like bring that into like a corporate, but you might bring it into a mastermind, right? Yeah. Like that becomes a really beautiful skill that not a lot of people in our generation, I think, have, but are leaning into more. So
true, which is like interdependence, right? So dependence and independence on the edges, and then that middle sacred ground of interdependence and how beautiful it is. And that's true humanity is we need each other. We all have the same root system. So I love that. Oh my gosh, so beautiful.
To answer your other question, where people can find me, you can go to Sarah Tacy. So that's Sarah with an H and then T as in Tom, A, C as in cat, Y at G. I almost give you my email. Not Tom.
I love it. Sarah Tacy.
And on there, you'll see I do work with different people who are having masterminds and retreats, and I do one-on-one work. And I also have a podcast called Threshold Moments. I have one that released last July, around July 4th, on interdependence, just because you just named it. I had one on double binds recently. So I do mini musings that are more about nervous system details. The moving from optimal to familiar. So all of those are there, as well as some really great interviews. So those are a few places that you can find me. And thank you.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay, so sarahtacy.com, and then come find you on the podcast. I can't believe I'm not listening to that yet. So that is now on my list for my hikes with the dogs. And how beautiful, Sarah, your work is so important and so lovely, and you are just a joy to spend time with. So thank you for spending time with us and taking time out of your busy schedule. And we'll let you get to those beautiful girls for pickup. But thanks so much for being here, listeners. Go find Sarah and enjoy her beautiful work that she's doing in the world, and reach out because she is a gem. All right, families, I hope you enjoyed this episode. As we wrap our time together, don't forget to head on over to freshstartfamilyonline.com/freedom to learn more about the Freedom to Be course happening online September 28th and October 5th. Alternatively, you can also find me on Instagram. I'm at Fresh Start Wendy, and just shoot me a DM with the word transform, and I will personally message you back with a link to check out what Freedom to Be is all about, as well as give you more info about the incredible payment plan we have available to make this experiential learning program accessible for all. Now, seats are extremely limited due to the advanced healing nature of this course. So if you are interested in pouring into yourself, yes, you deserve it, healing from your past, breaking free from limiting beliefs, and taking charge in the most empowered way to create the family and parenting experience, life and family legacy of your dreams, then head on over to freshstartfamilyonline.com/freedom to learn more. And as always, if you're watching this episode on YouTube, it's very easy to just click through the show description or the pinned comment down below. So that's an easy way to find all the information about Freedom to Be also. Thank you for being a loyal part of our Fresh Start Family Show community. We see you, we honor you, we are over here cheering you on. Hooray! You made it to the end of a Fresh Start Family Show episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you have a quick second, make sure you hit subscribe to our show so you can be updated when our new episodes drop. I will see you back soon for the next episode.